Have you ever wondered what it's like to meet a ghost? Not just hear a strange noise or feel a chill, but to truly come face to face with something unexplainable. For cemetery night guards, the quiet darkness isn't always empty. Tonight, we'll step into their world and hear first-hand accounts of chilling encounters from those who guard the resting places of the departed. I have never been one to believe in ghosts. At least, I wasn't until I took a job as a night guard at a cemetery just outside of town. It was supposed to be easy money. All I had to do was sit in a booth, do the occasional patrol, and make sure no one was sneaking in to vandalize headstones. Simple, right? Well, that's what I thought. I had been working as a cemetery night guard for about 3 weeks before anything weird happened. I mean, sure, the place was eerie at night, but nothing unexplainable. That was, until one night. At around 1:12 a.m., I was doing a routine walk along the older part of the cemetery, where the gravestones were weathered and cracked. Some had names so faded they were barely legible. The night was mild. It was only around 50 degrees. I remember this because I had just checked the weather on my phone. I wanted to know if I needed an extra jacket or not. Then, out of nowhere, the temperature dropped. 1 second, I was fine, and the next, I could see my breath in the air. My whole body tensed up, and instincts told me to turn around, and even though I didn't want to, I knew I had to. So, against my better judgment, I did, but there was nothing there. I tried to shake it off and kept walking, but then I heard a whisper right next to my ear. I froze in my tracks. My skin crawled as I turned my head slightly. Again, there was no one there, but the whisper came again, this time from right behind me. I didn't stick around to find out who it was. I walked straight back to my booth, locked the door, and tried to convince myself it was just the wind. I decided to just sit down and unwind with the podcast in the background, just to have some sort of noise other than the crickets outside. Normally, the sound of crickets is comforting, but for some reason, the sound of crickets in a cemetery just hits different. It's weird. At around 3:45 a.m., as I was sitting in the booth watching the monitors, I thought I saw something move near one of the mausoleums on the security feed. It was quick, a flicker of a shadow against the wall. The thing is, there was nothing around there that could have cast a shadow like that. I switched cameras to try to get a better look, and I saw it again. It was a shadow, but not a person. I grabbed my flashlight, and against my better judgment, I decided to check it out. As I approached the mausoleum, I swung the flashlight beam around, looking for anything that could have been out of place, but there was nothing, just the dull gray of the crypt walls. I breathed a sigh of relief and turned to go back. And that's when I saw the shadow again. It wasn't cast on the wall this time. It was standing a few feet in front of me, tall, dark, and wrong. I turned around and ran. I didn't stop until I got back to the booth. When I checked, the monitors were normal, but there were no shadows, no movement, or anything out of the ordinary. But I swear I could still feel something watching me. I sat down and just stared at the monitors, waiting for something else to happen. After about half an hour of nothing, I just started up the podcast I was listening to earlier and settled in. Around 5:15 a.m., I refused to step foot outside that booth again. I kept the lights on, checked my phone repeatedly after the podcast ended, and just paced around. After pacing for a bit, I sat down, and just as I was about to pull my phone out again, something touched me. It wasn't a breeze. It was ice-cold fingers brushing against the back of my neck. I knocked the chair over. I got up so fast. Of course, there was no one there, but my skin was tingling where I had been touched, and the air around me felt heavy, like the atmosphere before a storm. I grabbed my keys, called my supervisor, and told them I was leaving. I didn't care if I got fired. I walked out, got in my car, and didn't even look back as I went home. I quit the next day. I didn't even go back for my last paycheck. I told them to mail it. I didn't sleep right for weeks, and even now, I refuse to go near that cemetery after dark. Believe me or don't, but I know what I experienced that night. Something was there, something that wanted me to know it was there. And you know what? It succeeded. I used to work as a night watchman at a cemetery. It wasn't a big, famous graveyard, just an old, mostly forgotten one on the outskirts of town, the kind of place that barely got visitors during the day, let alone at night. My job was simple: patrol the grounds, make sure no one was trespassing, and report anything unusual. I lasted 3 months. The first few weeks were quiet. Sure, the place had a weird vibe, with graves dating back to the 1800s, crumbling statues, that kind of thing, but nothing outright creepy. That changed one night when I was doing my usual round around 2 a.m. There's a section of the cemetery with these really old headstones, half of them so worn down you can barely read the names. I was walking past when I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. At first, I figured it was an animal. We get stray dogs, raccoons, and sometimes even deer, but when I turned my flashlight in that direction, there was nothing, just rows of graves. I shrugged it off and kept walking. Then, I heard footsteps. Not mine. I stopped, held my breath, and listened. The sound was faint. It sounded like someone walking just a few feet behind me. I spun around, shining my flashlight everywhere. Nothing. At this point, my heart was pounding, but I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. So I started walking again, a little faster this time. Then my radio crackled. Now, understand, I was the only one on shift. The radio was linked to the main office, but no one was supposed to be on the other end unless there was an emergency. Though, through the static, I heard a faint voice. Help me. I froze and asked who it was, but all I got in return was silence. I turned around to finish my rounds and nearly dropped my flashlight. There, standing between two headstones, was a figure. I couldn't make out a face, just the outline. I called out, but it didn't respond. And then, it took a step towards me. And that was enough. I bolted. I didn't even remember running back to the office, but I locked the door behind me and refused to go back out. The next morning, I told my supervisor what happened. He just sighed and said, "Yeah, others have seen him too." I quit 2 days later. I don't know what I saw that night. A spirit? A residual haunting? I have no clue, but I do know one thing. If you're thinking of taking a job watching over a cemetery at night, don't. Spending the night in a cemetery is eerie enough, but as we've heard tonight, some watchmen have experienced more than just the quiet of the grave. Have you ever had a chilling experience in a cemetery? Let me know down in the comments. I'd definitely love to hear your stories. And if you enjoyed these true encounters, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss out on what's lurking in the next video. Until then, stay safe, and if you ever find yourself alone in a graveyard at night, make sure you truly are alone.